Tan, a former principal with the Fresno Unified School District.
And when you bring it in, you brought it in for the purpose of weakening the revolutionary tide of the people.
It must not be a capitalist system, but we don't want to exploit anybody. We don't want to be exploited, and we don't want to exploit anybody.
Ain't nobody going to do it for us. There's nobody outside of yourself, nobody outside of ourselves that's going to do this work for us. We have to put in that real work.
Because the better you are at exploiting people, the more successful you are within capitalism.
We want to say salute to all our political prisoners, our POWs, our elder comrades in exile.
The satisfaction we need as a people only comes through liberation and independence.
We're not just building for self, we're building for the family, because the family is broken. We're building for the community is broken. The nation is broken. The race is under attack. We're in a state of emergency.
You're tuned in to the New African Broadcaster. So
if you could see what I see, our community and unity, no frustration from brutality, with our black nation, a reality.
this is my perspective. It's my perspective. My perspective. My perspective. My perspective. My perspective. My perspective. It's my perspective. My perspective. My perspective. My perspective. My perspective. My perspective. It's my perspective. My perspective. It's my perspective.
Welcome everybody to the New African Perspective, the show that is dedicated to the liberation of New African people. I am your host, but I'm never by myself, not on this platform. I'm with the mighty, powerful President and Vice President of the Republic of New Africa, and they are none other than...
My eye, free the land.
Mama Ayo, free the land.
No doubt about it, and we're part of something called the Republic of New Africa, which is a part of something called the New African Independence Movement. And this is where we struggle and fight and do everything that we possibly can to bring about our own land, independence, self-determination, and the creation of an economic system that ain't all about exploiting each other. You know what I'm saying? I sound kind of beautiful. But these last couple of months, actually, we've been going over this extremely magnificent, wonderful, spectacular document called the New African Creed, and we're all the way up to lucky number 13, principle number 13. So what's that principle all about?
Number 13. I will steal nothing from a brother or sister, cheat no brother or sister, misuse no brother or sister, inform on no brother or sister, and spread no gossip.
Dang, now that's some serious code of conduct right there. You know what I'm saying? Some things that I think if we implement, that would change a whole lot of things and cut out a whole lot of unnecessary things. And I'm gonna leave that open to y'all. And when y'all talking about this, I'm actually gonna step out for a second and share the show and make sure everybody know we're on. So what y'all got? What y'all have to say about this particular principle number 13?
If you could see.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm hitting the wrong button. I'm clumsy. Well, I'm like I said. But y'all take it away.
I mean,
Thank you.
That's a major one. That's basically telling us the code of conduct. We don't steal from each other. We don't cheat. We hold ourselves in the highest moral capacity of known to man. Okay, we hold ourselves in high moral character. That's what our documents say, high moral character. So we're not stealing from one another. We're not cheating one another. We're not misusing anything. Any decision that we make regarding ourselves has to be not only benefit ourselves, but has to benefit everybody around us. That's how we gauge whether or not we are making a good decision. Because when you say cheat, when you say you're not stealing, you're not cheating, you're not misusing, you're not informing, You're not spreading gossip, talking behind people's backs and spreading things that you don't even know to be true. This is not how we operate within New African society. We're building a different society, a society where you don't have to be looking over your shoulder or trying to figure out who you can and cannot trust. These are the things that create a good society. It always starts with the self, and it starts with the decisions that we as the self make, because our decisions literally create the world. Our decisions create our society. So yes, we don't make decisions that cheat other people, misuse other folks, and we don't backbite and talk about people behind their back. Okay. Whatever, if you do say something, you better have said it to that person first. They better know exactly what you're saying. They need to understand. They need to comprehend. And I will leave it at that, Mama Aya.
Well, I definitely agree with all of those, because that particular principle, as well as all the other items of the creed, puts us in direct alignment with the Nguzo Saba, with codes of behavior of the coming forth by day, the principles of Ma'at. So when we break it down like we've been breaking it down over these past few months and weeks, cheating, okay, so you already know we're gonna deal with that. Misusing, of course we're going to have to deal with that, because what does misuse look like? It means that, of course, you're taking advantage, you're aggressing upon someone, etc., etc. Anything that we want to put out in society, that's going to happen. So our task is, if I decide as a New African and I'm incorporating these wonderful creeds into my life, that means that I am, of course, working on self, and I'm making sure that the behaviors that I exist in, that I exhibit in the community, is a reflection of the creed, because you have to be that beacon of light, even though you may have some what we call contradictory behaviors. We ought to be held accountable for that. In the New African Independence Movement, if we're citing this creed and we're saying these things, our behaviors, our attitudes need to reflect the work that we're doing. So there's always going to be a big controversy about, I will not inform. I will not spread gossip. Everybody knows, and I'm going to use an old saying that I learned in Africa. There are no secrets in the village. There are no secrets in the village. So making that statement means, what do you mean by inform? Inform to who? To the enemy? Or are you informing to the people that are trying to build this nation? That's the differentiation. And when we talk about informing, if we're a nation, of course, information should be coming back to the nation and not be utilized who we consider, or the system of white supremacy, racism. And of course, every day you get this advertisement. If you have any information about such and such and such and such, call this number. If you have information about child abuse, neglect from a social services point of view, call this number. So the differentiation becomes, inform to who about what. That's for us to talk about and to decide. And then, of course, spreading no gossip is information that is objective, that is shared within unit, community. Is it gossip or is it information? That's what we're talking about, the differentiation. Because gossip means you have, as Sister Sa was saying, gossip means, of course, you just talking. You don't have no basis of your information except you said, so-and-so told me. The question to all of us is, did you bear witness? Were you there? Were you participatory? So there's a lot of dynamics to these particular what we call the creed, because these are the stepping stones and the transformations that we are incorporating into our lives to help us build the new society, the new African society. And I yield.
Yep. Ashe.
Definitely. Yeah. So you made a lot of good points. I wasn't there to hear what you said, Star, but I mean, this is a very important principle because it really addresses a lot of the small things that create divisions and animosity between us, that creates an environment that is not conducive for collective liberation. And I want to go back to something you was talking about, like informing. I think that's an important discussion. We probably need to have like a whole discussion about what actually that means, because within, the street, it's this whole thing, snitches get stitches.
Right.
And there's a historic origins of that whole, mentality of don't snitch. It started on the plantation because if you told on your brother, your sister, they could be severely punished, many times with death. Hey, he up there trying to read, he getting a little extra food, he doing these type of things, and it led to death. If you remember just about all of our insurrectionists, our freedom fighters who rebelled against the system of chattel slavery, damn near all of them met their demise because of an individual told. Somebody who looked like us told the white power structure, told master, told the colonizer, and they were met with a gruesome murder, gruesome lynching. It's still talked about that people believe that some of Nat Turner's body parts are still floating around the South in jars in old white people's basement.
Yeah.
So, this concept of snitches get stitches, no snitching, it has a real origins and it has a real meaning for us. But I think, unfortunately, we've taken that was once a positive and we created a negative with it, because within the streets, people apply that to somebody who killed a 5-year-old child with no snitching, snitching. A child molester, a predator of your community, no snitching. So it's a real discussion, because we have to understand clearly, that these principles that we're using them, we have to be using them in a way that benefits us and not protecting individuals that don't need to be protected.
Exactly.
So it's really important that we gain clarity. But I mean, it just kind of speaks to the insight, especially, when you look at when the creed was written, when you look at, the Republic of New Africa starting in 1968 and throughout the 70s, when many of the documents were being written. What was also going on during the time period was a program called the Counterintelligence Program. And they utilized informants to take down our movement. Notably, the Black Panther Party, many of our elders and ancestors in the Republic of New Africa, in the New African Independence Movement. The reason why many of them are in prisons today is because of that program and because of informants. Our brother, Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. was brutally murdered because an informant gave the layout of the Panther House down to the details of where he would be sleeping, to a pop can, a soda pop can, which would be on the television. So they knew exactly precisely how to go attack that brother. So this creed is extremely important, one that we should all take note of and implement into our lives and really follow it. All of the creeds, all of the principles are extremely important. So, that's what's up. New African Creed did it again. So far, they're 13-0.
I think one of the words, really quickly before we move on to our next discussion point, one of the words that came to my mind as y'all was talking is we have to have discernment. You know what I'm saying? discernment, and then another word that came to mind was responsibility. If our goal, our ultimate goal is freeing the land and building this nation, and we're building it in alignment with universal law and order, what you decide to speak about and to whom you decide to speak about, you have to ask all of them questions that Mama Ayo said. You got to ask, who is it benefiting? Is it benefiting all? Who is it hurting? We got to ask ourselves these questions. That's how we do that self-analysis, that we maneuver, because it's easy. Sometimes we just do stuff mindlessly. We don't think about it. We're not thinking about who is hurting. We just laying stuff out. That's when we have to have discernment in terms of how we move, because our actions, our thoughts, our actions, our words, our deeds is what creates our world, creates our society. Okay, so discernment and responsibility. We got to always stay on our square, circle, and triangle. We are responsible for what happens here on this planet as highly melanated beings, or as new people. We're responsible for our nation, whether it fails or succeeds. If you sitting there complaining, talking about it's failing, okay, well, it's something that personally you're not doing to ensure that it's not failing. You know, so discernment and responsibility as we maneuver and engage with one another and commune in love and light to build this nation. You know?
Definitely. Well said. And with that, I'm gonna go to the audience real quick. I see Melly Queen, you out there doing your thing. What's up? And everybody who tuning in, make sure y'all drop a line, let us know you out there so we can communicate with you, because this is the New African Perspectives, meaning it's all of our perspective. I see Noble Turner out there. Said, what resources do you have to build our nation? Y'all, anybody want to address that?
Yes.
Okay.
What resources? The first resource is you and I as individuals, because the spirit of liberation, the spirit of understanding that we have the human right to build our particular nation that we have established, and we have identified the number one thing is we need man, woman, and child to help build the nation. So if you decide consciously through your thoughts and actions that you getting ready to become a conscious citizen worker of the Republic of New Africa, you are the most precious asset that we have, because we've already got the plan. We got the plan, we got the land, we got the government, we've got all of that. But you and I are the most precious items that this government has. And if we don't have the majority of Black people in America, the descendants of enslaved Africans, stop talking about liberation. Stop talking about that it's wrong. Stop talking about inequality, what is not just, because you and I have decided that we're getting ready to build this system, be happy with whatever they give us until we start maybe cutting up, frowning, and then a few little concessions are being made. Or we're going to make the conscious decision, comrade brother, that we're getting ready to build something different, because we have the human right to do it.
And I would like to just add, because the brother is still asking questions. He said, when you get the men, women, and children, what's the next step? Well, brother, this particular nation has been in existence since 1968. So we already have a Declaration of Independence. We have our own Constitution. We have a lot of foundational documents. So if you are interested in finding out more in terms of what we stand for, what our goals and objectives are, and our points of planning, go to our website, pg-rna.com. And if you have any other questions, you can hit any of us up, and we can go into that thoroughly for you, because this is well laid out. So we can have a conversation, my dear brother.
And real quick, I just throw out just a couple of things. One thing, especially like you said, the most valuable resource we have is our people. You know, and you said, well, when we get the men, women, and children, what's next? Well, it's not really a what's next, is what's now, what we're doing now, what we're trying to do now. And the more help we have, the more efficient and the more successful we can be. And that is gaining control of our communities, gaining control over the institutions, creating individual institutions. So before we have the we occupy the nation, we need to have concrete examples of what independence looks like. Like right now, that is what is within our grasp, what is within our control. See, right now we are capable of creating our own schools. We're capable of creating our own banks. We're capable of creating our own institutions. So these are the things that we have to focus on to bring about actual independence before the plebiscite. You know what I'm saying? And eventually, once we get developed to that point, we got to have a plebiscite so we can decide, yo, this is what we're really trying to do right here, and let it be known to the world. This is what we're actually trying to do right now. Then you go into a whole nother stage of development. So, you know, that's just some, and this is actually a really good topic that you're bringing up. You know what I'm saying? And we could actually spend the rest of the show analyzing that, but we got a whole nother show planned on. So
that's an excellent topic. But put it, you take note of it so that we can, you know, address that later.
People want to see tangible, yet it takes people to build tangible. You know, and we have pockets of tangible all over, brother. You know that. You understand what I'm saying? Yet to see a massive tangible, there has to be a massive group of people that are creating tangible. Okay, we have pockets all over, but then 1, 2, 3 people can't build your nation for you. This is your responsibility. You got to hop on I'm here. I'm ready to build. Let's get it. You understand what I'm saying? We always used to look at outside of ourselves for the answer, and that's the reason why we in this particular predicament that we're in, because we're always looking outside of ourselves. I call it a Jesus complex. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to be that tangible. We have to be that living, walking example. And like I said, if you want to have a one-on-one, there's many examples. There's a lot of tangible that's connected to this particular nation.
Definitely. So yeah, that's actually that's a good discussion. Appreciate that, brother Noble Turner. And this is a discussion that we have to explore farther. You know what I'm saying? Because you make really, really good points. So thank you for that. So Samaat, what we got on tap for our show today?
Okay, so on our show today, which I love that we had the number 13 creed, and we're going on the 13th in the Black Power, the documentary, the 13th in the Black Power file. That 13, that number 4 looks powerful. So the Black Power file, we're gonna be going over the 13th documentary of concerning the 13th Amendment. And then of course our main topic, of course, we have to, coming out of Ida B. Wells, we have to discuss what is going on in Memphis, Tennessee. So our question for our main topic today is, did these 5 Black cops display racism against their own? Right, so we're going to be going to the dynamics of that. And then of course in our Cadre Corner, we're going to discuss the infamous Willie Lynch letter, right?
Interesting. But I guess we got to start out with what's been going on in the news.
So much.
Yeah, so much. And I basically, being that we're here in Ida City, formerly known as Memphis, Tennessee, the thing that has been dominating here that we can't get away from, and you know, even if we want to get away from it, which we don't want to get away from it, we want to hit this head on. But the death of our dear brother Tyrese Nichols on January 7th, he was brutally beat by several police officers. I'll just leave it at several police officers. Initially, they said it was 5, but we're gonna get into that a little bit later. But he ended up in the hospital with a broken neck, into cardiac arrest, and he eventually succumbed to his injuries on the 10th, 3 days later, and he died. And This past Friday, the video was released, and it's ugly. It's nasty. It's brutal. They beat this brother for like 3 minutes straight. They took turns brutalizing this brother. It was just disgusting. But honestly, you know, it ain't, you know, it's not the first time, or not even the, you know, last time that it happened. Over the last couple of months, it's been happening several times. People just haven't had the attention that this particular case has. But it sparked protest and a lot of conversation and a lot of action. Some of the protests throughout the country got kind of rough, kind of violent. The ones in Memphis have been relatively peaceful. But what have you all had the opportunity to view this video, this snuff film?
I'm gonna be very honest. I may watch it later. I am not watching it. I did a little small snippet. I already know what happened. Okay, he's not here. He's not here anymore. Now, if I was the one to be investigating it bit by bit, piece by piece, yes, I'm going to be looking at it through and through. But the bottom line is he is not here anymore. So
exactly. Well, you know what? You know, this is New Afrikan Perspective, and why don't we just take a look at it right now?
1 out of 4 human beings with their hands on bars.
Damn, I didn't do anything. Hey, I didn't turn your around. All right. On the ground. You don't do that. I think tase you. You don't get on the ground. I know. One. Now. I'm tasing. All right. Okay. Okay, dude. Damn. Put your hands behind your back. Okay. Stop. I'm gonna knock. Hey, you guys are really doing a lot right now. Bro, lay down. I'm just trying to go home. Lay down. Man, if you don't lay down. Oh, I am on the ground. Put your hands on your stomach. I got you. Okay. Stop. I'm not doing it. Wipe you. Hey. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. You might get sprayed again. Hey. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Hey, give me your hand. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Hey. Hey, Mike. Give me your hand. Mom. Hey. I was high as a kite. Yeah, I was good. You can't go nowhere. You can't go nowhere. You can't go nowhere. You can't go nowhere, man. You ain't going nowhere. You can't go nowhere. He's still, man.
That's kind of a little compilation of several videos put into one. Some notable things. There was a point where the brother was on the ground and the guy came and kicked his head like it was a football. Kicked it so hard he actually hurt his foot, you know, because he went away limping away. There was a time, I don't know if you noticed it, but they had him hold it. They was holding him up as they was taking turns punching him, viciously uppercutting him. it was a lot. You know what I'm saying? Any reaction to what happened to our brother? To any of y'all, y'all have any reaction to that?
This is our reaction.
You know what the reaction is, because if we really wanted to speak like real talk, it would be very, 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 very bitter, disappointing, hurt, because we are all mothers. We right here, we are mothers and fathers on this particular program and in our audience, and we know. I know I'm of the age where I have 28, 29-year-old children and beyond, and that is not how we imagine that our children will be treated and have to live in this particular society. It is painful on another level, which we'll be talking about today, to see. Well, let me just put it this way. You expect that there's going to be some type of issues when we have, let's say, some of the street organizations, and they meet up and they do what they do, and there's confusion, and there's contact with one another. For us to see young men who are supposed to be protecting and defending the community, the face of law, do that to us, to somebody that looks like them. They don't even know if that young man was a cousin, third, fourth, fifth cousin, somebody's auntie, somebody's girlfriends, brothers, whatever. They didn't know, they didn't care. And so there is not just the rage that to see us doing that to each other in that particular manner, but also the grave disappointment, another level of our hearts and minds being once again disappointed in who and what we are and what we represent in this world. And I'm going to stop right there because,
Exactly. It also shows how much of this self-hatred culture, how much of the culture that we have embodied. You understand what I'm saying? To the point where we will beat the hell out of each other. It's just a lack of respect of life in general, a lack of respect of our lives in general. It's showing us the level of self-hate. It's showing us the level of insidiousness. This is what we're dealing with. This is the mindsets that we're dealing with. You understand what I'm saying? So it's a psychological revolution that has to take place, honestly, before we build anything. Because honestly, if we start building right now with these mindsets right here, we're going to build the exact same thing. We're going to build the exact same racist constructs, because this is what we think of one another. And this is a reality. This is in one institution. This is just one institution. The police force. What about all the other institutions that racism takes place, that kills the minds and hearts and the spirits of our body and bodies? The institution, the medical institutions, all of that. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of things that go into building. It's a lot of things that we have to rectify within ourselves. See, because that's another reason why certain things are stagnant in terms of happening, because what we have between one another amongst ourselves, that's totally self-destructive.
Yeah, exactly. A little more information about this. Now, the individuals who murdered Brother Tyrese, 29-year-old black man, unarmed, who was doing absolutely nothing. First of all, that one thing the video shows is that the police lied off the top, because they said they pulled him over and he fled, he ran. They didn't pull him over and he ran. They pulled him over and they attacked him. They aggressively pulled him out of his car, and then they attacked him. But the individuals who attacked Brother Tyrese was part of a anti-gang, anti-community violence unit called the Scorpions. which stands for, I can't remember the exact word, but it got this nice, pretty name that basically says you're for the community and neighborhoods. But there have been complaints about this unit and other units just like this for, ever since its beginnings. And there are other units like this all over the nation, and they all have the same problems. They were created to supposedly deal with the crime problem in the inner city, but ultimately they brutalize the people because they look at the community through the eyes of the European power structure. So they look at us as all being criminals, all individuals who need to be controlled and put into their place, because that's the very construct of the police, not to serve and protect our communities, but to maintain and to keep us in a certain place so they can maintain the power structure and status quo. So this particular Scorpion unit has been dismantled. They got rid of it mainly because of this. But the second story that I want to go to, and it something that a lot of people have been pointing out since the video came out. We all know that it was 5 Black police officers who were pretty much responsible for this. And Memphis is getting a lot of praise from the way they swiftly fired these guys and charged them and arrest them and all of those good things. Yeah, which they should happen. That's what should happen. What's Crump, the attorney, actually said, this is the blueprint of how these things should be handled. Okay, maybe so. But what's interesting on that video is the first officer to ever tase this man was a white man. And we haven't heard from them. We haven't heard about that. You flash these 5 Black men who should rightfully so be held accountable, but we don't say anything about this white dude who initially tased the brother. And he said, you can hear him saying, I hope they stump his ass. So I got a little bit of information on that. So there's been a 6th officer who's now been suspended. His name is Preston Hemphill. This is this white cop. Now, he hasn't been fired. He hasn't been charged. He's just been suspended. So a lot of questions are being asked, like, okay, why you putting these 5 brothers on Front Street, but you ain't doing nothing to this white cop? He just suspended. And you know how suspension go. That's just suspension with pay, which is a paid vacation, which all of them get. So the question is, hey, y'all playing games with us? Is this a situation where, it's police brutality, but since it's 5, we got some Black faces who's doing it, we can use them as an example? But as for the other people who have been doing this for years and will continue to do this that don't look like us, it's going to be business as usual. What do y'all think about that particular dynamic?
We definitely know that there's always 2 laws in America. One for the people who have conquered this land, and we call that white privilege, racism, white supremacy, and then the others for the brown and Black people of this world. And sometimes it flows over into the Asian community, if you really want to know what's going on. But the whole point is, of course, the white officer was going to get suspension because he didn't play a role in this young man getting beat almost to death and breaking his neck. He just did the first tase to incapacitate him to allow the others to come in and finish the job. Why would he get fired immediately? Does he look like you and I? Does he not have the whole legal system? The system of the whole legal system as far as the federal government, state government, and local government telling us that he is privileged and he does not have to go through the same things that the Black brothers, police officers, need to go through. All of them need All of them needed to be treated the same. Whether they tased, whether they kicked, whether they broke the neck, they are accomplices in this young man's murder.
Definitely. Did you want to add to that, Sar?
No, I'm not. I don't want to add right now.
Okay. Well, I would just say, when you ask, like, how do you feel about these black officers who, committed this horrendous crime against our brother? I always say I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. Don't care. I feel the same way about them as I feel about the murderer of Mike Brown, the murderer of Tamir Rice, the murderer of Breonna Taylor, the murderer of Darius Stewart, who got murdered right down the street from where Tyrese was murdered from. The only thing that I will say is the murderers of all those old other individuals were walking free.
Exactly.
What I will say is I need you to keep that same energy up. The same energy that y'all attacked these brothers who rightfully so, who brutalized this brother, and y'all quickly fired them, and y'all quickly charged them and arrested them. Y'all need to keep that same energy up with the rest of these folks, because the murderer of Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Darius Stewart, and the list goes on and on and on and on. They need to be locked up too. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
And Brother Prophecy, I want us to actually analyze that. All of the young men and women, Tamir Rice, Mark Brown, all of them. Let's look at who they were, of course, murdered by.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would call them assassinated by. And somebody's doing the study as we speak. How many days did it take for those officers to officially be charged or officially have to come to court or even suspended? Most of them were suspended or they were put on desk duty until further investigations before they could be formally charged. I want us to do that math, because math does not lie. How long did it take? Who was involved versus this particular case? And as I said, what these young men got, these police officers, they got what they got. Definitely justice is being served. But look at the manner on how justice is served for someone who looks like us, who are the descendants of enslaved Africans, versus the colonizers, or who we call the people who conquered this land for the indigenous, aboriginous nations, and transported over 100 million African slaves into the diaspora. I mean, I'm just saying. And we'll talk about it as we talk about the 13th Amendment. What did that really do?
Yes.
So go ahead, Sister Sa.
I'll cut your thought off.
Go ahead.
So for me, like, this whole situation is extremely self-reflective, right? In so many different arenas. It's self-reflective in terms of us as a people once we work for institutions that do not support us as a people. It's self-reflective in terms of what that does to our mind space as the time goes on, when we make a conscious decision that we're going to be a part of an institution that was created to just catch a nigga anyway, right? A conscious decision to do that. And seeing time at the time, I'm sure some of them brothers have been on the police force for long enough to know and see all the deceit, all of the nastiness, and made the decision, I'm about to partake, right? So it's self-reflective in that manner. It's self-reflective in terms of the ways and means we deemed necessary to respond, right? The ways we respond. If the ways and means that we have continually responded in the past has never worked for us, okay? It is actually, okay, how long have we been marching? How long have I'm not saying that it's not important to voice, hey, this is wrong, right? Yet, does it make sense to voice only that this is wrong when that voice only has been going on for how long? At some point, our actions have to back up what it is, what's happening. Like, we have to live in reality. The reality is, within this particular system, the foundation of this system is slavery. The foundation of this system is capitalism. Somebody is always going to lose within this particular system. It is very unjust. It's a known fact. And we're going to keep having example after example after example, because that's what it is, right? At some point, and I feel like right now is a very critical point. So for all of us revolutionaries, this is our critical point where we can ride this wave. For all the nation builders, for all the ones that's really, really want to put in that work. Yet remember, it's highly vital that whatever work we're doing, that we are doing it collectively and we're on the same page.
Absolutely.
See, because we're going to talk about Willie Lynch and all that pitting against one another and, oh, you doing this, I'm doing this, blah, 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 blah. It's too much of that. Even with the marches and all of that, yeah, we over here, we doing this, and we over here. What is it doing ultimately? We got to look at this with a critical eye. So it's self-reflective of us, all of us, in terms of what we have to do now to ride this wave, to put in something better in place that's going to be beneficial to us all.
Definitely. So we're gonna take us a brief break, because we could be talking about this all night long. Before you know, we're gonna have 8-hour show. But when we get back, we're gonna do a Cadre Corner, the infamous Willie Lynch letter. I know some people are already saying certain things in their head and stuff like that, but we're gonna address all of that when we come back right after this at the New African Perspective, y'all. Free the land.
America, full of promises. Time to cash them in. You run from it quick. You never keep your word. I learned from it quick. You keep abusing me. You dumb.
Europeans murdered 98% of the indigenous population right here in Turtle Island in order to steal the land. An entire nation of African people were captured and forced into a brutal system of chattel slavery just so they could work and cultivate the land. All wars are fought over land. Not over terrorism, not over religion, not even to win the hearts and minds of the people, but for the actual land and the resources within the land. So it is safe to say that land is the foundation to all freedom. So if we truly want to be free, then our struggle is for land. Free the land.
Study the writings, speeches, documents of our freedom fighters in order to free our neo-colonialized minds. This is the Cadre Corner.
All right, Mama Ayo, it's on you.
Free the land. Today we're going to be looking at this particular document. It is called the Willie Lynch letter. But what I love about this particular, and it is a booklet, is that it also has in it the makings of a slave. And of course, we want to give you a little bit of background. Willie Lynch was supposedly a plantation owner from the West Indies that had come to visit the Virginia area. And as he walked up and around the plantations, he noticed that quite a few of the slaves were already being hung. We're already being made examples to the rest of the slave population to not resist, not to talk back, etc., etc. So this letter, supposedly was supposed to be his response to the plantation owners saying, you're losing money. You're losing money by getting rid of all of these, of course, rebellious slaves, these slaves that cannot understand that they are now our property. So he wrote and spoke, because it could be a speech, to the gentleman, we need to come up with this formula. I have this formula that if you institute this particular formula for just 1 year, and you be consistent, you make sure that your women and your children institute this particular system, or you will not have to worry about having rebellious enslaved Africans for 400 or more years and beyond. Now, we do have controversy. Some people say that man never existed. That's not the reason why we have lynching, that this man was the Lynch. Lynching itself was named after him. Nevertheless, let us take that particular argument out of the scenario and let us ask ourselves, was he correct? Did he make a viable argument to the white plantation owners? You're going to be able to control your slaves if you begin to do the following. You need to make everything an issue. You want to make an issue of the heavy-set slave with the thin slave. Definitely the most famous. You definitely better pit the light skin against the dark skin. You better pit the short with the tall. You better pit the young against the old. You better pit the house enslaved African with the field enslaved African. You want to do this, and they say it could, if you put it in the right manner, perpetuate this particular system, because when you read literature about enslavement and all the different ways in which our people were mistreated and dehumanized, they never expected people from Africa that look like you and I to ever be free. We were to be in their possessions in perpetually. Our children's children are to be under them. So this particular document is very, very vital, because it says you're going to pit the old against the young. You're going to pit the male against the female. So if these words have been spoken and this particular document was just made up, my question to the audience, my question to us as thinking melanated beings, did this particular system that supposedly people argue about, this man didn't exist, so this document is irrelevant? I want us to analyze it. Does this document merit us analyzing it and be able to turn the tides of this particular mentality that we have? And I submit to you, yes, whether this man Willie Lynch existed or not, where does this document come from? Where these words come from? Why was this particular strategy or experiment put on enslaved Africans? And even to today, 2023, which we'll be talking about shortly, it is still relevant, because it's still a reality for us. It is still a reality. Now, what I love about this particular booklet, it doesn't just give us the letter. It also says the makings of a slave. And it gave us a pretty good breakdown as to some of the strategies and tactics that were going to be, of course, utilized during that time. The inbreeding, making sure that you put fear in the female, where she instills in her daughter to be strong, to endure, and yet when it comes to the male child, to make sure you're always fearful. Talk to him. Don't rise up. Keep your mouth shut. Just take it. One day it's all gonna be better. Jesus is on the main line, etc., etc., etc. So, and to also what we call minimize our marriages. It also has a part in here that I thought was very, very interesting, that the white man himself was to make sure that he left as much of his DNA as possible into the female enslaved African. Did you hear what I said? To make sure that he had his DNA in as many enslaved Africans as possible, as a strategy, because after all, we were pieces of cattle, and we were to be broken just like the horse. They likened it here. I'm reading it from the document. I'm not making it up. To look at us as horse, cattle, pieces of property, and to do the very same thing, and also to use language, and also to use, when we talk about language, also use, of course, the religious preachers, etc., etc. So this particular booklet it goes a little bit more beyond the Willie Lynch letter. It's called The Making of a Slave. I picked this up years ago in an institution that is no longer here. But I of course, I encourage everybody to Google it, because it's definitely on Google, and download it. And another study item in our various study groups, book clubs. This should be a, definitely, let's set the tone. Let's have those conversations. And with that, I yield.
So the Willie Lynch letter, and I will just say this, because there's a lot of people out there who listen and be like, man, how you gonna do that? That ain't even real. It's fictitious. It's made up. I will say it doesn't matter, because in all societies you have stories, you have folklore that is created in order to teach lessons throughout the people. Would make it easy for people to learn lessons that might be a little more complicated or harder to grasp. So even if we're teaching it as part of our folklore, or part of just a story that help us understand better, then when you analyze it like that, then we say, well, does it do that? You know what I'm saying? Because if in any oppressive situation, any situation of oppression where you are under the domination and power of another people, certain things automatically happen. You automatically look at your oppressor. You have Stockholm syndrome. You start worshiping the oppressor. You start valuing them and devaluing yourself. And if you understand, you read the slave narratives and the things that happened that we know true, that we ain't got to argue about. You read Frederick Douglass, you read Carlos Equianos, and so many, many more. We understand the system, the treatment of our ancestors was clear. We understood that they divided and conquered us. We understood that the dark-skinned enslaved were treated worse than the light-skinned. We understood that the ones who worked in the kitchen in the house were treated worse than the ones who worked in the fields. We understood all of that. It ain't a question about that. So there's no point in arguing over something is real or fake. We need to be saying, okay, is this a tool that is useful or not? That's what the argument should be. Not if it's real or fake. We can say, okay, let's say it ain't real. Okay. But are the principles that could be learned from them, from that document, is it relevant? Is it something we can utilize to help us understand our current condition? Now that's a real conversation that we can have. You know what I'm saying? Because if you believe it's not, then okay, we can talk about why and why not. But just to be like, it ain't real, fuck it. That's
Exactly. I think a lot of times we don't like to deal in reality, right? We want to act as if like this particular document specifically, we want to act as if we don't see this every single day play out. We see all the discrepancies within our relationships play out every single day, because everybody complains about it all day long, up and down social media. Every aspect, the light skin, dark skin, self-love, self-hate. We just went over a whole international incident that happened right here in Memphis, where we have our own killing our own. Our own that's supposedly supposed to be hired to protect killing our own. Let's be specific. So, whether the document was real or not, we see the evidence play out in real society. Like, let's not act like, I don't know, that argument is always crazy to me, because we have all of these psychological issues from somebody telling you too something. You too black, you too this, you too that, and everybody got psychological issues and self-esteem issues, and they end up don't loving themselves, and it's impossible for them to love the next person. So we're seeing it play out. So it doesn't matter if the proof is in the pudding. In real life, this is the issues that we have, and we know that this is a part of a system, a ritual that we have been participating in ever since.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this document supposedly was written, or the speech was delivered in 1712. And if we do our calculations from the time the first enslaved Africans, 1619, we're going to use that date. That means that we had 3 generations of Africans that were brought. Remember, that was only 100, let me do my math, 103 years into slavery. And of course, the rebellions, the constant, of course, our belief that we were to be free. The rebellions never stopped. The things that they were doing on the plantation, all of that were forms of resistance. And of course, they had to be shown. Our genitals were cut off. Our brothers and sisters were hung. Babies were cut out of stomachs. Anything that you would do to a horse was done to make sure that enslaved Africans were reminded, don't run away and don't let us catch you, because this is the condition you're going to be in when you come back. The branding. Don't ever forget the branding, like we were cattle. If you on your face, on your shoulders, somewhere prominent, to know that, oh, somebody owns this enslaved African. They didn't care whether you had your emancipation papers or not. So I agree with Brother Prophecy. I agree with President Sa. How are we going to have an argument that the document didn't exist when you and I are in the paradigm where even in our own families, we have discrimination against the whole system of Louisiana, discrimination against color.
Yes.
Color that we deal with every single time we walk into circles and events. There's this sideway look. Who are you? Why are you looking at me? And that's up and down the paradigm. And at one point in time, let me say one point in time, when we were serious about emancipation, it didn't matter because we used those tools to our benefit and not our detriment. So what happened to turn these particular issues against ourselves? That's what we need to be talking about. When did the shift come? Because it was embedded in us. But at one point in time during emancipation, freedom time, those things were minimized. So what happened to our community to make sure that it doesn't exist? Because what's happening in Rwanda today, some things are not allowed in the society any longer. And that's what we need to be looking at for ourselves. Some things are going to be addressed, and then we're going to say, in this new society, that's not what we're going to do. Colorism is not going to exist. Sexism does not exist. It's in our Declaration of Independence. I'm just saying, if you want to read it, it's there.
Yes.
So, we're looking at things from a very, very practical stance. We deal with it all the time. You got to deal with it every single day if you're sitting in a classroom. So you know what happens in the family because your children are manifesting those behaviors in the classroom and in the society. So don't make that argument that document is a fake, because if it was a fake, we would not be exhibiting those particular behaviors and beliefs within ourselves. I yield.
Mama, I yield. Oh, go ahead, Brother Prophecy. You was gonna say something.
Oh no, you can go for it.
You said something. You kept saying for ourselves. We were specifically working and doing for ourselves after the Emancipation Proclamation. This is for survival, right? We about to thrive, and we're going to work together to make it happen quick, fast, and in a hurry, right? Because all of these different Black townships just popping up popping up. Why? Because everybody had the skill set. Look, we about to work together. We're gonna make this happen. Boom. We got to climb ourselves out of this hole, right? So that we can thrive and live the way that we know that we are meant to live as free people. And then, of course, the attacks, because we still at war.
Always.
We still at war. So it's something about doing for self, right? For ourselves that empowers you. Huh? That empowers you, that makes you want better for yourself. When you're doing for yourself, it's a power thing. It gives you power, it gives you strength. Yet when that's stripped away from you, it weakens your constitution because you're not able to be you. You're not able to be the divine being on the planet that you're meant to be. So all of these war tactics, integration, we're dealing with real life war tactics that attack our mental, our spiritual, our psychological well-being in terms of how we view ourselves. When you don't do for self, you don't see the value in self. When you're not doing for self, you're neglecting self, right? So we're operating from a deficit. And we know how that goes. When you operating from a deficit, what happens? You flatline. So, for self, that's a major thing. For self. I'm doing this for myself. Why? Because self is vital. I value myself. I value us and what we're building. And when that's stripped away, that's what we're experiencing today.
Definitely.
We're in a weak point, weak state of mind, state of spirit, weak state of being. And we have to start doing for self to strengthen ourselves.
Absolutely.
It's vital, because if we don't, we think what's happening now is bad. It's like a flip. We've exchanged cultures. Because what we're doing to ourselves is what our enemy done. We got them out the caves, but they was killing themselves. And they sick and they can't.
Oh, you done started to know another topic
of energy, because we've taken on all of these bad habits and trained like dogs to do so.
Exactly.
Because we're not looked at as human beings. And I know we're going to get into that when we get into the 13th, but are you back?
It all overlaps.
So that's the Willie Lynch letter. A letter where the real or fake analyzes and outlines a program that really helped to create many of the divisions and the self-hatred that we see today. Whether you believe the document is real or not, whether it is real or not, the consequences of the enslavement of African people being under a system that tells us that we are less than human beings, the results are obvious. And with that, being under a system that has created so much self-hate and self-destructive behavior patterns amongst our people, leads us to our topic, because we've been talking about, as well as the whole world has been talking about, these 5 Black police officers who brutally beat Tyrese Nichols. And a lot of people say, oh Lord, look at we just killing each other. It's Black. You can't talk and say it's no white problem now, no racism now, because it's Black people killing Black people. But I want to pose the question. Did what these 5 African police officers, I know it hurt to even say that, African police officers, that brutally murdered our brother, is this actually an example of racism? Is it an example of white supremacy? Or is it something else? I'm gonna open that up to anybody who want to answer.
Well, we've always taught, and I do teach, that you can't be racist if you have no power. And a white supremacy racism is a what we call a result of capitalism, imperialism. The white supremacy and the racism was just, like an added bonus, because they were saying they were the great white race, genetically, whatever, because they thought people was going to believe that nonsense. But when you are in a system and everything from the educational to the even how we bury our dead, how we birth our children, how we marry, the holidays in which we here in America contribute to, is all based on capitalism, imperialism, that money that needs to be made, and the money that they make and the policies that they make to get this money is to get as much from the people who built this country, enslaved Africans, pay them the least amount, and through their, everybody has rules of operation, rules on how to do business, is designed and has been designed to look at the new African as they walk into any institution and automatically label them, automatically put them in a category where you don't have anything, you don't have any intelligence, you don't have any what they call home training. So when we look at racism has tools, and the tools are people like you and I, people who are Hispanic, people who are, we call of the Chicano nation, Moorish nation. We comply with the rules because we getting a paycheck, we getting pension, we getting insurance, health insurance, we getting everything. We always say we the best trained slaves on the planet. Well, let me rephrase that. The best trained enslaved Africans on the planet, because we are the living examples on how to hold the fort for a whole people that don't love us, never has, wants to do anything and everything to us, wants to denigrate. They want to use our strength. They want to use our inventions. They want to use our mastery of every single science in the world. And yet your people, they suffer. The people suffer. So these young individuals are the face of white supremacy. We call them, you can call them Oreos if you want to. You can call them coons if you want to. But they are the face of white supremacy. They are the black face of white supremacy and racism. And I yield.
Definitely. If you got anything you want to add, Sa?
I agree 100% with you, Mama Ayo. Really and truly, because this is a racist system. This is every institution that is within this particular framework feeds this particular nation, who is rooted in racism, whose foundation is slavery, whose foundation is capitalism. Somebody is going to lose. This whole particular nation was built on our blood. It is still going to be built on our blood until we decide different. It just is what it is. And for those of us that decide we're going to be working within this particular system, and we're not protecting our minds, our hearts, and our spirit from becoming our own enemy, we're going to be our own enemy, because that's who we're working for. It's simple. It's as simple as that. That's how it goes, because we are still those spiritual beings. If we're practicing somebody else's system, and when I say system, that means ritual. And when I say system, that means rhythm, rhyme, and reason. We stepping in somebody else's beat, to somebody else's drum, to somebody else's music. We're gonna become their agenda. And their agenda is still racism, white supremacy. Their agenda is still somebody gonna lose, and it's gonna be your black ass that's gonna lose. It's still, it's nothing. It's not new. This is what we have been experiencing, like Mama Ayo said, since what year, Mama Ayo? 16, 19, and beyond,
and before,
exactly. So it goes back to us. It all depends on us and what we have to be willing to do, because it's a life or death situation. As we keep seeing the death. I want to live. What about y'all? I want to know what it feels like to really live.
Absolutely.
Huh? And the only way I'm gonna know what it feels like to really live is for us to build it, to build our life the way we want our life to go. If we don't want no more violence against ourselves, then that means that we have to create a society that does not ride and thrive on that. And if that means we have to change how we think and change our heart condition to actualize it, well, guess what? That's what we got to do. And that's what we got to be willing to do. And if we're not willing to do that, hush. Don't complain, don't march, don't cry about it, don't whine about it. None of that. Period.
Definitely. And I think a lot of times we get confused when we talk about racism, white supremacy, and we think that this is something that simply exists in people's hearts and in their mind. The reality is these things are actually systems. So it doesn't matter if you actually can change somebody's heart. If you change someone's mind, if you don't change that system, the same results are going to happen. It ain't really about whether white people love you to death or they hate you. Actually, that don't even matter. That's not even important. I don't give a damn if you don't like me. You don't like me. I don't like you. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? But if there is a system in place to maintain a status quo, and that status quo is with European people on top and Black people, African people on the bottom, and they maintain their position by the exploitation of these Black people on the bottom, then that's a problem. That means that system was designed to maintain that power relationship, that power dynamic. So it doesn't matter who you put into the system, as long as the system is designed to maintain that power dynamic, that's what you're going to get. That's why when Barack Obama was elected, didn't anything change? Racism didn't go away. White supremacy didn't go away. As a matter of fact, it got bolder. It became more active because, hey, you got a Black person in office. You have a Black face. It's called neocolonialism. So now that there's a Black face in power, then we can just blame white folks because they don't understand the system and the nature of the system. They still think it's about people's hearts and people's mind and not by a system of exploitation. If you go back to the slave plantation, when you saw a Black overseer go into power, we didn't say, oh, there's a Black overseer, therefore racism doesn't exist. Even though Black overseers were known to be just as brutal with their white counterparts. We never said, oh, this Black person doing it, we can't talk about racism. No, because this Black overseer is operating under the umbrella of a white power structure, a white system that is created to benefit and fuel this white system. So once we understand that, once we identify that is a problem, then it's our job and responsibility not to just keep talking about the problem. You talk about a problem, you examine a problem, you understand a problem for one reason and one reason only. That's to solve that problem. So what we need to do to solve this problem, if we understand that our problems with racism, white supremacy is because we are up under a system of racism and white supremacy, then we need to get out of this system of racism and white supremacy. And if we understand that under this system of racism, white supremacy, there exist institutions that govern our lives, then we need to detach ourselves from these institutions and create our own institutions that were designed to benefit us. And stop being dependent upon our enemy's institution for our lifeline, because their lifeline is sucking the lifeblood out of us, out of our community, our nation, our race, because that is what it was designed to do. It don't matter if you got Black teachers in a school with a white curriculum. It don't matter if you got Black police officers in a police system that was set up to maintain your community and oppress it and to make sure that it does not threaten the status quo. It does not matter if you have a Black president, if you have a country that is built upon the exploitation of your Black ass. None of that make a difference. So we got to think seriously about real solutions. We can't keep on begging white folks to treat us better because Our problems are not the result of how white people feel, or how they feel in their heart or their mind. It got very little to do with that. It has all to do with the system that was created many centuries ago. And it's working well today because it has an opportunity to evolve and evolve and evolve to the point that we don't even recognize it anymore. We think we're the problem. So, like I said, brothers and sisters, like I said, if we really want to be serious about change, and I hope we are, because look, we get tired of seeing the same thing happening over and over and over and over and over again, then we got to get serious about building our own communities, our own institutions, and ultimately, the ultimate goal is our own nation. Absolutely. Brick by brick, step by step, we will get there, but we have to be collectively focused on the goal. And I'll yield on that.
Yes, Brother Prophecy, and just to add to that, us building our nation is one thing. Like, we have to build for self. If we don't like this, we have our divine right to build for self, right? But at this point, it's vital for our well-being and for our healing. Do you not comprehend? What we have been through for the past 500 years has been so damaging, so much damage to our psychological health, our physical health, our mental health, our social health, our economic, every single aspect. It has been so damaging. And this is the part of reparations that people don't realize, huh? We have to build for self so that we can heal ourselves, so that we can repair, reconnect. Remember, we were stripped from our bloodlines, huh? We over here not knowing who we are, who our ancestors were in terms of. For those of us that know, we so lucky. We just aimlessly moving about. Don't know what blood we got. Don't know what traditions we have culturally. So this is our time as we build for self to repair, to heal, so that we can be whole again, so that we can stand stern and firm and won't nobody be able to move you from who you are and what you are. And and we now know, if we didn't know before, we got to fight for our life, fight for our lives, and fight for the continuity of our life. This is what we fight for. That's what reparations is. We repairing ourselves so that we can return to our greatness, so that we won't have to be looking at this self-destructive behavior anymore, huh?
Exactly.
And to just veggie back off of that, let us look at the dynamic of these 5 to 6 individuals, 5 of them being new Africans, how they were able to go ahead and aggress upon someone who looked like them, knowing that this is what we call contradictions. You get into the police force and you get all this training, you get all this equipment, you get the perks of the job, you get to blah blah blah. But there's one thing that everybody knows when you're in that kind of institution. You better not do that same thing to a white boy or a white woman, for that matter. You better not touch your hand and break in on an old white man or an old white woman and draw your weapon on them. I bet you better not do that. And that's why I say there's a contradiction within the system. Yeah, you there as the gatekeeper. You there as the person that's going to aggress upon your community. But I bet you're not going to go over to Cordova, Germantown, Millington, and all those other places and do that to a white individual. And you already know it. And that is systematic of everything. Every single time you come into an institution, if you see a lot of Black people, they're going to either treat you with respect or they're going to look down their noses at you. And in some instances here in this Memphis, they're going to allow other people who don't look like you to get in front of the line. And if you don't raise your voice and you don't complain, it is almost as if Systemically, we are being programmed to allow that kind of behavior and that kind of attitude. You'll have people that look like you, are in very nice positions. They got theirs. They talk to you like you a dog, and that is a result of systemic racism.
Exactly. I want to go to some comments real quick. We actually been on for a pretty long time already, an hour and a half. But Dennis Bolt right the second. So this only happens to powerless people, meaning, you know, what happened to our brother Tyrese. And you're absolutely right, because it goes back to what you just said, Mama Ayo. They know exactly who they can do that to. They're not going to go to Germantown or Cordova or wherever and pull that same type of behavior, because they understand Black people, especially in the so-called hoods, the inner city, you are powerless. You can do this, and you think ain't nothing going to happen. You know, I guess they wasn't expecting the brother to die like that, because if he didn't die, probably nothing would have been done, nothing would have been said. And I'm pretty sure that this happens often because they were so confident in it. You know, anytime you do something brutal like that, that ain't something you just do out of the blue. That's something that you usually work your way up to doing. You got to have enough confidence to go kick somebody's head like it's a football, you know? It ain't something, you know, and think you're going to get away with. Coco, how you doing, Coco? Imagine how many other attacks this so-called Scorpion unit engaged in over the years. That's a good point. You know, it wasn't really years, because it was just created by this new police chief. So maybe a year or so. But to think about this, these individuals, the 5 individuals who were fired in charge, but there are actually 50 members of this unit. So you got 45 more people who just running around there, who've been running around there, that didn't get caught, you know? So excellent point. Also, Coco, there was a white pig involved. Never heard anything about him. And we talked about that. You are absolutely right. Wish I had the paper. I think his name was, what was his name? Last name was Hemphill.
Preston Hemphill.
Preston Hemphill. Yeah. Hey, see, that's why it's good to take notes. Preston Hemphill. He just was suspended with pay. So he's on vacation right now, pending an investigation. But like we said earlier, you want to hire your fire in charge the Black cops, do the same for the white cops. Keep that same energy. Mad Black King said, free the land to you, brother. I remember Detroit had a unit similar in the 70s called the Stress, newly appointed. It's called the Stress unit. I actually heard about that. Yeah. Newly appointed Mayor Coleman Young, heard about that too. Black man disbanded it immediately. Yep, I do. And I'm trying to remember, because I think that was surrounding the riots that went on in Detroit. Ooh, I wish I didn't remember the details of that. But yeah, it was something I was researching that for. Yeah, because the brother that we interviewed, who was from the RNA 11, who did that interview on our show, he was talking about the Stress unit because he was from Detroit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Baba Hadisa Baba.
Exactly, that's him. Yep. Freedom Power, yes, it's worthy of examination. It's full of actual phenomena that plagues us today. Break it down for us, VP Ayo. That's basically what we're saying, you know. Instead of just dismissing something, then, you know, can we have a critical analysis of it? See, is this thing useful for us? You know, can we learn anything for that? Belly Queen with some announcements. Save the date, March 31st through April 2nd, 2023 in Charleston, South Carolina. Come celebrate with the Republic of New Africa, celebrating 55 years on the road to a plebiscite. Free the land, definitely. Other announcement, national and local New African elections coming up November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 2023. Get with your local district and local election commissioners and make your New African vote really count. Free the land. Definitely. And of course, thank you all for joining us on the New African Broadcast Association, NABA. Please check out our other shows, New African Perspective on Mondays at 1:00 p.m. Central Time. Facebook Live, Foundations of the Nation tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central Time. Conversation Between Comrades, which will actually be at 6:00 Eastern Time on Thursday. In the Truth and Power Corner on Fridays, 5 Central Time. On Blog Talk Radio at area code 516-387-1549. Free the land. Definitely. So yeah, make sure you check out all our broadcasts. We do this all through the week. And here's somebody named ND. Free the land to you, comrade. Good, glad you checking in. All right. President Sá said it well. If we don't exercise the muscle of nation building for independence and sovereignty, the muscle will become weak. We have to exercise our nation building muscle or else remain dependent. What's that? Ward of whitey power. Y'all gotta excuse me, like some of these letters are real little, and I was like, is that ward or word? Okay. Ask any weightlifter what happens when they stop lifting weights. Them little muscles become flabby, y'all. You start jiggling a little bit. Matter of fact, the more muscles you have, the more flabby you get.
That's right.
Yeah. Brother Ukali says it's called internalized oppression. Mm-hmm. And it surely is internalized oppression. Mm-hmm. Very well put it. But we have our Black Power file coming up shortly, and we're gonna be talking about this documentary about the 13th Amendment. So when people say slavery was over, it was way back then. Well, 13th Amendment in this documentary exposed how they still legally enslave us today. When we come back right after this, this is the New African Perspective. Free the land, y'all. Free the land.
By any means, by any army.
I fight for land, independence, and for reparation. We gotta do for self-determination.
Being independent is a very, very good thing because it means that you don't have to be dependent, especially on people who don't like you. I mean, growing your own food, like teaching your own babies our real history, the real truth.
As a people, we are not grown unless we have independence. We are not grown as long as we living under another man's system, operating in his way of things, his laws, and his ordinances that support his rule, actually. So to me, it's not the importance of self-determination and independence. It is mandatory.
We could make a change, get off our ass, do something else. Go get some land together, grow our food and do for self. Create our own stores, our own banks, our building wealth. Break them.
1 out of 4 human beings with their hands on bars, shackled, in the world are locked up here in the land of the free.
Khalif Browder was walking home from a party when he was stopped by police.
Then they said, we're gonna take you to the precinct, and most likely we're gonna let you go home, and then I never went home.
The 13th Amendment to the Constitution makes it unconstitutional for someone to be held as a slave. There are exceptions, including criminals.
The loophole was immediately exploited. What you got after that was a rapid transition to a mythology of black criminality.
Some people got the real problem.
Animals, beasts that needed to be controlled.
You better believe it.
I'm only human.
It became virtually impossible for a politician to run and appear soft on crime.
The kinds of kids that are called super predators.
Millions of dollars will be allocated for prison and jail facilities.
3 strikes and you are out.
It was an enormous burden on the black community, but it also violated a sense of core fairness.
Some people got the real.
The states were required to keep these prisons filled, even if nobody was committing a crime.
It's so difficult to talk about mass incarceration because it has become heavily monetized.
The
focus is on taking people from prison, putting them in community corrections, parole, and probation.
How much progress is it really if now there's a private company making money off the GPS monitor?
We now have more African Americans under criminal supervision than all the slaves back in the 1850s.
I'm only human.
We are the products of the history that our ancestors chose. Products of that set of choices that we have to understand in order to escape from it.
You should go looking somewhere higher. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me.
Was 13th, the documentary on the 13th Amendment and the re-enslavement of African people, because as we know, if you read the 13th Amendment, which so supposedly freed the slave, it didn't just free enslaved African, it made a loophole that in which our brothers and sisters could be legally enslaved to this day, and that's through the prison system, which is a multi-billion-dollar business today that makes this money off of the enslavement of our brothers and sisters, mostly our brothers and sisters. So y'all got any comments on the documentary, the issue of mass incarceration, the 13th Amendment, and the enslavement of our people? Anything about that? Open it up.
Well, that's very multi-layered. We gain physically, we gain the right to walk away from the slave plantations. But when you talk about politically, the 13th Amendment, Emancipation Proclamation was never designed to include us in the society. In the society called, of course, the 13 colonies, whatever you want to call it. It was never designed to do that. And that's what we had to face as a people coming out of enslavement, chattel slavery, trying to rebuild our particular communities, trying to have self-determination, and then realizing that there are no mechanisms for us to elect people to represent us. We made laws within our own townships about what was correct and what was not correct. But when we stepped out of our own particular townships and we had to do business elsewhere, that's when you got to those black codes, those little bitty things that allowed them to, if I look at you and I suck my teeth, you finna be whipped, or you finna be strung up, or you finna be put in jail, or they gonna put you on the chain gang, or they gonna put you in some type of incarcerative dynamic, and you and I were not supposed to say anything. It gave you the right to touch on our women, to molest our girl children, and we were supposed to endure in silence. And when we didn't, and we stood up for ourselves, we were either lynched, burnt out, ran off, or we had to result in defending ourselves and then leaving the area. Because there was going to be retribution. So the 13th Amendment gave us the opportunity to, of course, help the Union bring these particular states back into their unit. And when you read a little bit more about the 13th Amendment, it was designed to encourage new Africans to come and fight for somebody. To fight on behalf. And the good thing that was supposed to happen is they were supposed to have been given land and the opportunity to start up their lives. And you and I both know that did not happen, because we've already gone over that document. So we're sitting here powerless as far as political power. So the 13th Amendment is only a continuation of a system that gives you the illusion of inclusion. Because there's been too many amendments that had to be instituted even after that document to encourage us to be participatory.
Yes, that sounds like a whole bunch of weapons of mass destruction to me. If you say, weapons of mass destruction to us folks who are still prisoners of war, because if you free, somebody stole you from your land and you free, and you don't have a choice to go back to your land or to someplace else, wherever you want to go, because you're a free being, you still a prisoner of war. If folks say, oh, I'm about to give you land, so you could just start all over, build whatever you want, and then take that from you, you still a prisoner of war. If you say, okay, one aspect of slavery, okay, because we've, after hundreds of years, we built up enough wealth, we can shift our system, improve our system a little bit so that it can make everybody, quote unquote, happy and pacify folks, so to speak. But it's still the same thing. It's still another different type of weapon. Let's build it differently and get the same result. I mean, that's what we're looking at. And because we've been through the whole Willie Lynch cycle Mama Ayo just went over, we don't look at that as those are my brothers that are locked up. We're not looking at it, those are somebody's sons and daughters. We're not looking at that like that. Why? Because that's them over there. It ain't got nothing to do with me until it happened to me, right? So yeah, that's us making it perpetual. We forget about freeing our sons.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I mean, I'll just say a lot of times we look at the period of enslavement, that institution of enslavement, and we see the brutality of it, we see the hate, and we kind of miss what it actually was. I mean, what it actually was, it was a system of exploitation. And the purpose of it wasn't necessarily to brutalize you. It wasn't necessarily to even oppress you, but what it was set up to was to exploit our ancestors for their natural resources, for their body, for their labor, to make these European power structure, white power structure, rich, wealthy, and powerful. That's ultimately what it was. It was a system that exploited us for our labor, for free labor, which made them wealthy and powerful. And it's important to understand that, because when slavery supposedly ended, they still wanted the system to exploit us for our labor to exist, to carry on. They just realized, and the truth of the matter is about slavery was going to, this particular form of slavery was going to end anyway, one way or the other. It didn't even have to have a war in order for it to end, because the cost of it was too much. When I say the cost of it, it was going to a point where the threat of insurrection, the threat of the Nat Turners, what happened over there in Haiti, became too big of a risk for this European power structure. It's like, okay, hundreds of years of brutalizing these people, they ready to cut master's throat. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to kind of chill out with this, because this is a danger for my life, for my family's life, for my children, and all of this type of thing. Because remember what Nat Turner said, when he was doing the businesses, he called it. He left out and he heard a baby cry. And instead of walking and leaving, he said, no, I got to go get that baby, because if I don't get that baby, he'll grow up to be another slave master. You know what I'm saying? This is what our people was. We was like, no, this shit got to go, So we have to understand the true nature of this system, and we focus on the brutality because it was horrendous, it was terrible. But at its essence, it was a system of exploitation. And when it evolved into capitalism, capitalism is still a system of exploitation. So slavery did not stop, it simply evolved. And when you look at the 13th Amendment and how they use the prison systems, it's still a system of exploitation. So we understand, when we take a critical look and a critical analysis of what's going on and look at these things as systems, then we see, damn, ain't nothing really changed. And we look at our lives collected, we realize, oh, you know what? We are down. Well, I don't want to say that our lives, of course, is better than being captive slaves. Those conditions are much better. But when you look at what happened to us after slavery, after the period of enslavement was over, and you look at the amount of resources and land and actual things that are considered wealth, we had more of it then than we do now. A lot of times we get confused between wealth and money. It's a difference. Wealth is something you can pass down to your children. Money is just something you can splurge and look good to the other enslaved people. I got me a nice car. Look at this watch. You know what I'm saying? That's not wealth. That's not power. That's not going to change the power dynamic. That's not going to change the condition of the people. So this documentary, exposes really how capitalism is just a manifestation of slavery. It does an excellent job, and it breaks it down from the corporations and how they enslave our people, on a fundamental level, justifying it because we say these are criminals and we just throw them away and we forget about it, and I'm a yield on that.
And I'd like to say, in addition to what you're talking about, Brother Prophecy, because all of it is very, very vital. You talk about a system of exploitation. We're going to take it to the next level because I know our brothers and comrades and sisters, they have a lot to say. It is also embedded with a belief system, a spiritual system in which we were utilized and controlled. And one of the things that I will never forget being told, that our enslavement launched this country, who was formerly Britain, into an industrial revolution that is unprecedented. Our Black labor, the way in which they experimented on African people, their incursion into OBGYN, that was on our bodies. That was our bodies that were being experimented on, that were being cut on, since we were horses, we weren't given the medicines that we needed for child labor and birth, because after all, we're able to do that. It is a lot of the children who became our slave masters because they inherited that wealth. We suckled at their breasts. We suckled them at our breasts. They have that Black milk in them. That was their genesis, because for whatever reason, these little white women decided that they didn't want to breastfeed, or they were too whatever. We had to do that. Every single scientific breakthrough that they had back then, the experiments were done on I people, Black people. We launched them into that. The banking system was created off of our Black stock, the stock that was invested in the slave trade. So let us never forget. And it's not just England, and it's not just France, and it's not just Spain. It's all of them. All of them have an investment. And they are going, as we say, you're going to get your reparations together, because we're coming for you. Each and every one of you, because it's documented, the science and the math is there. So let us never forget that remember, you and I want to talk about capitalism and imperialism, but there's some insidious, what we call human rights abuses that were committed under the guise of capitalism, imperialism, because white supremacy and racism is an inhumane act, that has been coupled. And because we weren't allowed to read and write, we were told what to say. Our whole spiritual system we were told what to say because we couldn't read at the time, or pretended we couldn't. They told us how to interpret the Bible, our spiritual system. So let us never forget. Every system that we can think of, from marriage, from birth to death, was destroyed, mangled, misinterpreted, and ultimately wiped off the face of history. I yield.
Shame.
Definitely. We're gonna go to some comments, because I know in a minute we got to get out of here because we got other things we got to take care of today. I've been just running. Meta Queen been real active. You've been on fire, Queen. We have exhausted all other means. When is it going to be time for us to build and do for ourselves. I say about 200 years ago. That's when we should have started it. Well, we continued it, you know.
I say.
Come on, family. Damn. Somebody catching the Holy Ghost on it. There are family when is enough going to be enough. Like I said 200 years ago.
When we say it is. When we say it is.
When we say it is. That's why most of our people and families have some kind of criminal history or background.
Absolutely. Yep.
Definitely.
You couldn't turn right. You couldn't stay on the sidewalk while a white man walked by. Because if you did, they was coming for your family, your life.
Exactly. Okay, the Reconstruction Amendment only served to redefine but not change the power arrangement between new Africans and Americans, society as a whole, American society as a whole. This matter has been analyzed, complained about, and protested against for more than 100 years. It's past time for us new Africans to take decisive steps to change our relationship with the U.S. society, the U.S. government, and all those committed to our ongoing oppression. Damn right. Time for us to make that conscious decision that enough is enough, and it's time for a change. And really, we're the only people who can do that. White people can't do that for us. There's a lot of things white people can do, but they can't do that for us, you know?
Correct.
Exactly.
Come on, Let me see. He said, drop the mic, VP, Mama Ayo Deli. So in other words, these are people who was feeling what you were just saying.
Yes.
That's why we're supposed to have our children well educated. Because if they don't, they're gonna be like, well, no, we just slaves. No, you better know why we were enslaved, how we were enslaved, the repercussions, and the consequences of what that particular strange institution is. And that's why we're in the CRT era, brothers and sisters. Everything is interlocked. Everything.
Yep. One thing I would say about that, if we analyze things, nothing lasts forever. And if you look at this American system, it's actually on its way out. It's struggling. You see European of having ideological struggle between each other. They're about to have their own little revolution against themselves, and it's important that we don't get caught up into that nonsense. That's why I say, man, I don't be worried about these Democrat, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, all of that BS. You know what I'm saying? We need to be focused on our own struggle. Let them do whatever they're gonna do to each other. Because once their system falls, if we're still connected to this system, it's going to fall right on top of us because we're at the foundation of this system. You know what I'm saying? So it's really important that we understand that dynamic and we don't get wrapped up into what they're doing and we focus on what we need to be doing. But, you know, I think we did it again. Another great show. Yeah, we've been on here about 2 hours today. Y'all got any thing y'all want to say before y'all get up out of here? Before we get up out of here?
Like I try to tell, anytime we meet, whatever spirituality that you follow, please, as part of your prayers for yourself, pray for the redemption of the race, because those prayers, you know, when we combine them from all the different, spiritualities, it's like a mighty, mighty shield that goes around the earth to wake us up, to help us remain fortified to do this work. We've been kind of taken out of the paradigm, y'all. I told you we're the best trained enslaved Africans on the planet. Why not do for self? Why not work for self? Why not build our world versus somebody else's world? Because ask yourself the question, are you happy in this world right now? You got everything at your fingertips. You got every kind of electronic. You got every opportunity to walk into a building. You got every opportunity. Well, we can't say that because not all of us are going to be given jobs. But you have every opportunity to to at least attempt to fulfill your destiny. How is that working for you and yours and your community and your family? How's that working for us?
Exactly. And to build upon what you're saying, Mama Ayo, work. It's like we have become allergic to work because of the paradigm that we see work in, right? We are used to working for somebody else outside of ourselves that never benefits us. So when we mention work to build for ourselves, because we've been practicing and ritualizing in somebody else's spiritual system, because when all systems are spiritual systems, okay? The racism, white supremacy, systematic racism, white supremacy, that's a spiritual system, okay?
Yeah, you better believe it.
That is a spiritual system. You know, people, we tend to separate spirituality from our daily life because we're in a system that has separation from church and state, right? So we tend to think like that, as if that's separate from our everyday doings. You know, and it's not at all. And if we shift that and we start practicing our own system, meaning that we're working for self, it's empowering when you work for self. It's gratifying when you're building something from your hands, from your brilliance, and you see it coming to fruition. Just like how you give birth to a child. A mother and a father give birth to a child. They bring a child into this world. It's gratifying to see your child come through healthy and strong and grow to be productive adults, right? It's gratifying when we pour into self. When we build for self, it strengthens us. It teaches us more about ourselves. We get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. But because of our relationship with work, in terms of what it has been, and it has not been benefiting us, that's a mental glitch.
That's
you
right.
That's a glitch that we're going to have to get over. And put into practice. If you just start, because it's difficult to break habit. If you're habitually self-destructive and you're habitually working for somebody else, it's difficult to break habit. You got to you got to just jump. You got to be brave enough to just jump. And when you start doing it and you make it a practice and you make it a habit, it feels real good. It strengthens your constitution. It makes you stand affirmatively, speak affirmatively, think affirmatively about yourself and your brother and sister.
Exactly.
It makes you want to do more and more because you see the benefit of how it is improving all around. And you are in alignment with universal law and order because you're standing in your birthright as a being on the planet, right? So all of that plays a part. You know, so happiness in the work. I just wanted all that to say happiness in the work. And tomorrow on Foundations of Nation, I think we're going to go into that tomorrow. I think that was our topic. So we're going to go a little bit further into that. But Mama Ayo said it, like, do the work. It's going to benefit. It might be uncomfortable initially because you're not used to it. But as you keep going and going and going and pouring into self and pouring into us and loving on us, and doing things that are beneficial to us and our children, and reconnecting with the habits and the rituals and the spirituality that we as a people have always had, I promise you, I guarantee you, it gets beautiful, more and more beautiful every day.
Definitely. And I'll just say, you know, this, since y'all just dropped the mic on me like this, we always talk about this is a system of oppression. This is a system. And that if we don't change the system, we're going to get the same results, even if we're the ones that running the system. People always say, well, we need to hire more police. We need to hire more Black police. Well, we have an example of many Black police officers. And they seem like they did just as good of a job as oppressing and murdering us as these white police officers. So it ain't really about changing the individuals in the system. We got to change the whole damn system. And with that, this is the new African Perspective. Our brother Prophecy. down always with my comrades. I love these two queens, Mama Ayodele and Samaat. We will see y'all again next week. Make sure y'all tune in, get together, carry on the conversation, you know, with your children, with your brothers, your sisters, your parents, with everybody. And after we get finished talking, get out in the streets and do the work, y'all. Free the land, y'all. Free the land.
By any and all.
And when you bring it in, you brought it in for the purpose of weakening the revolutionary tide of the people.
It must not be a capitalist system, because we don't want to exploit anybody. We don't want to be exploited, and we don't want to exploit anybody.
Ain't nobody going to do it for us. There's nobody outside of yourself, nobody outside of ourselves that's going to do this work for us. We have to put in that real work.
Because the better you are at exploiting people, the more successful you are within capitalism.
We want to say salute to all our political prisoners, our POWs, our elder comrades in exile.
The satisfaction we need as a people only comes through liberation and independence.
Because we're not just building for self, we're building for the family, because the family is broken. We're building for the community is broken. The nation is broken. The race is under attack. We're in a state of emergency.